Boruto episode 15, A New Path. Now, this episode is interesting, mostly for the fact that it was a pretty uninteresting episode. I just didn't like it, to be totally honest. I feel like nothing in this episode, well, I shouldn't say nothing, because there was definitely some stuff that has me super excited, but it was not like the main point of the episode, because this episode felt like one of those useless epilogues to a story where it's like, this is what happened after all the cool stuff, and it was just nothing that really mattered. There were a couple of moments that mattered, and there was some stuff that really, there was like one moment that mattered, and then there were other two moments that I just thought were cool. So the moment that mattered is that the characters are officially getting into the three-man squads, where it's like, okay, you need to now practice with other people in your class to figure out what three-man squad you're going to be with. So of course we have Mitsuki and Boruto together, and then they're like, okay, well, who do we team up with? And they talk to Denki and Iwabe, and they're like, well, we teamed up already, and we got Sadara, who of course eventually is going to be a part of Boruto and Mitsuki's team. And so they're like, alright, well, let's go to Shigadai, and we officially have that moment that we all knew was coming. But Shigadai's like, yeah, I'm officially doing the Ino Shikacho thing. So, they officially have that in the show now, which I didn't think of this until this actual episode, but I was like, oh yeah, I guess when they team up, it's different from when Ino was on the team and even her father, because they both used the same skill, which was totally abandoned after, like, oddly enough, the tuning exams, because that's what we're leading up to now. But that was abandoned after she used that fighting Sakura a super effing long time ago, because that move just left her wide open. Like, we've seen it fail, and we've seen it work. It's like, that's just a hard technique to effing pull off. Like, even in the games, some of the games, like the Clash of Ninja game, they have it where you can miss that move, and you're just left open. It's like, yeah, it's not like that epic of a move for that sort of sacrifice, so it made sense. Like, eventually, she was just a normal fighter, and that was it. Like, in the games, when they got rid of that skill that, she used to be like the special thing for her character. After that, she had like flower bombs, and that was like her main thing, which never really came up in the show. But that was like, ever since that happened, all the video games have been like, she uses flower bombs and stuff. And I was like, it makes sense because of the flower shop, but it never really showed up that much in the show. So it's just always funny. Like, when I finally thought of that in this episode, I was like, huh, that changes up a whole thing, but makes it a bit more useful now, because we still get to see, like, because of Sai's ability and Elongene, really, we get to see the beast scrolls and stuff. So I thought that was cool, and that was like the important element of the episode, was that, them picking up the teams and talking about it, and us figuring out like, how is this going to play out with Iwabe and Denki, which is a big part of next week's episode. The action in there, I wish it was longer. We got like the montage of the totally relevant characters, but we only got like a short sequence of our actual fighting characters, which really sucked, because I was like, okay, they ended up going with Metal Lee. Of course, he gets put out easy, because it's like, hey, everybody's watching you. So, of course, he gets put out, and I was like, that's kind of messed up that he did that to him, but they were trying to win. And so we see, like, a really small action sequence. I love what they did with Mitsuki and Shigadai, because with Mitsuki, I was like, as powerful as he is, he probably could physically break out of, the jutsu, especially with it being Shigadai and not, like, Shikamaru. So I was like, alright, we've seen that before, where some people are just physically so strong, they're able to, break out of it. So I figured that's what he was going to do when he talked to Boruto, like, you mind if I try something? But then he ends up, like, shooting a kunai out of his mouth, and I thought, like, that was actually really cool. Oddly enough, I don't think I've ever actually seen that happen, at least not in that circumstance. I'm sure I've seen it at some point where someone has, like, a kunai in their mouth, and definitely, like, those little needles, I've seen that for sure. But I was like, that's cool. That's a cool way to get out of it. He has, enough control to, move his mouth. He was able to, like, turn around. It didn't seem like he was really struggling at all, honestly. But, he spits the kunai out, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then he, like, destroyed the whole scaffolding and everything, and Boruto gets the flag at the top. And I like that they've used the flag thing, because that will actually show up as a part of the tuning exams. But I was like, okay, that's a cool little moment. That's fine. The scene with Boruto and Naruto talking, I love that scene, because I feel like it was the first time they actually spoke, and it wasn't, like, a random issue. It wasn't about their relationship. It was just like, what's happening with the Clash rep? What's happening with Sumire? Like, is she gonna stay here? Is she getting transferred? Is she still in trouble? And I like that. It was just a normal conversation between the two of them, not about how Boruto doesn't like his dad, or how Naruto isn't able to really be a dad. It was just a different conversation. It was a simple conversation that they were having, not with other characters, but with each other. And this is like the closest we've come to them just being a father and son. And I like that moment. Shino talking to Sumire, I actually thought was a cool moment too. And them kind of just talking about her character and where she currently is mentally. I thought that was a great scene as well. And then her at the end, when she actually goes, to the students and everything, and it's, they have that moment of silence where everyone's talking and everything, and then they see Shino. and then they don't see Sumire, but she's like around the corner. I love that scene because it was just complete silence, and you kind of got everything you needed from what you saw, because you still see her standing around the corner, and it's kind of like that final moment of her deciding, do I go back or do I leave? And I love that moment because she's there. Because if she was just 100% like, no big deal, she would have just walked around the corner with Shino from the very beginning. But that was kind of the point. Even though she was allowed to go free, it was like, do I go back to what I know, or do I go free and then kind of start all over again, for basically the second time? And I like that idea. I like that scene and just that final moment of contemplation. But she ultimately, of course, goes back to the rest of her friends and stuff. And personally, I think the impact would have been greater if she did decide to leave. But I'm now super excited because I'm like, all right, well, if she stayed, now I'm just even more curious how they're gonna like get rid of her, or if they're gonna do like kind of a retcon for the Boruto movie stuff. Because I've mentioned this from the beginning, Denki, Iwabe, and Sumire are not in that movie. So it's like, all right, they already got rid of the ghost thing. They talk about that early on. Like, there are no more incidents, so that's why the eye power goes away. And now they have 3 full characters. And I was like, one of them they could easily get rid of if she goes to another school. But she stayed. So now I'm just, like, super curious. Like, all right, well, now what's going to happen? Is she going to end up on a team with Denki and Iwabe? Just how is that going to play out? Are they going to kind of retcon the movie? And even some other stuff coming up, which I'll explain, because it was literally the end of the episode. And some other stories coming up. Are they just going to retcon it and put the characters in, or how is that going to play out? So it does have me excited, just because I'm so curious how they're going to make it make sense. But I enjoyed that scene. I thought it was really well done. And then we got to stuff I actually liked, because that was most of the episode. And then like the last 4 minutes I actually loved. But other than that, like I said, there were those cool moments. The conversations were cool. The little fight scene I thought was okay, because I wish it was like a cooler action sequence. It was just very simple. But I just felt like for most of the episode, it was just like, I just don't care. Most of this stuff means nothing. It's like they're introducing, the 3-man squads, which is somewhat, entertaining. It is fairly important because of what they're doing. But it was still just like, this is the very first step of it. So it's not like it meant that much, because it won't be permanent until everyone officially decides. And we know how it's going to go, but it's going to take some time before they get to the official 3-man squad. So it's like, all right, well, that'll happen at some point. So it was kind of important. The action sequence wasn't like that big of a deal. And the conversations were good. And that ending sequence was good. Sumire with the kids, and she looks at Boruto, and he looks at her, and she gets like, main character emotional mode, and she cries. And then we go to like basically the epilogue for like this whole episode, which felt like an epilogue to the whole story arc. And I loved it, because it was like basically 3 different scenes that were like all epilogues. So we have one scene, I can't remember the exact order, but I do believe the Naruto Sasuke scene was the first one. And so Naruto's running up this tree, he lands, I'm like, it's going to be Sasuke. Sasuke turns around, they actually talk, and I was like, cool. So they talk about that. They talk about how Danzo was so close to Kaguya's abilities, which makes me think of the alternate dimension stuff. That was like the first thing I thought of, because everything else technically was just normal chakra. It's just lessened over time, because that's just how things work. But when I think of like Kaguya's abilities, the first thing that comes to mind for me, honestly, is the dimension stuff. That's the one thing she has that's totally unique. No one else has that, but they do have like other, chakra abilities. So I was like, that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, so is it like dimension stuff, or just really powerful? But the first thing that came to my mind was being able to like jump through or dimensions and stuff like that. So I thought that was great. But even if that's not what it meant, it was still cool. It's like, they were so close to getting to Kaguya's abilities and stuff. And then the other scene goes to the guy, I don't remember his name, but the dude, crap, there's so many like Hagoromo, Hagiyasha. I can't remember the exact, I think I want to say it's Hagoromo's brother. The Sage of the Six Paths brother. It goes to him. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but that was in the movie, so that's, sorry if that was a spoiler. And I think that's him. I'm still not 100% sure. But they show him, and like he's talking about how some things are about to start playing out more, and it sounded like, and this is funny because it made me think of Dragon Ball Super, but it sounded like he was saying that the dimensions were about to start, blending together, and like this little shatter opens up, and he like grabs it and crushes it like a piece of glass, as if he's trying to keep the dimensions completely separated. And I was like, okay, that's very, very cool. Once again, that did definitely take me to Dragon Ball Super with the whole tournament of the dimensions. But it was like after that little epilogue scene, we have another epilogue scene, which goes to the 2 guys from Kaguya's clan that show up in the Boruto film. And during that film, I always wondered this, but it was like, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. I did always wonder if they're a part of like Kaguya's clan or whatever, where were they at? Why didn't they help her out when she showed up? Granted, that's like on the other side of the planet, and all this other random stuff is like, it's not like everyone's just going to show up somewhere just because they're related to somebody. It's like, that doesn't necessarily make sense. But I was kind of curious, like, oh, okay, how are they tied to this character exactly? And based on this episode, it seems like they're adding more story to those two characters because they're just the villains of the Boruto movie, and that's really it. There's no real explanation. They're just these really powerful villains, and that's really it. In this, though, it seems like they're adding more story to them as if they came from another dimension. Because in the Boruto movie, Sasuke fights them, and it's like, alright, they're somewhere snowy. That's it. They're at some temple, and it's like no big deal. This was like, no, they're definitely in another dimension right now, and they're leaving seemingly from their dimension where their all of Kaguya's clan is, at least that's what it seems like to me, and they're going to be going to Boruto / Naruto's dimension, and that's how they end up in like the Boruto film and all that. And I was like, that's really awesome, because that allows it to be like, hey, after the Boruto movie stuff ends and they beat those two villains from Kaguya's clan, other people from their clan will realize what's happening, and then maybe the dimensions will be splitting even more. Like, it'll split like little by little, and eventually it'll be a bunch after the Boruto movie stuff, because that already exists. So it's like, alright, well, this will happen and nothing will happen but them being villains. And then after that, the whole dimension shattering thing will officially be the next story arc. Or maybe not, because I haven't read the manga, so I really don't know. But that seems like kind of where they're headed. It was basically like, here's an epilogue, and here's an epilogue. And it's like, these two characters are from the Boruto movie thing, so that's great. We know how that's getting set up, and we'll get a little bit there. This guy is from the last, and he knows some extra information about what's playing out. And then the Sasuke Naruto thing, that was really just to see Sasuke, like, nothing else really happened there. But that was great. And then, even the ending itself added some new stuff for this season, which I thought was great. And we also find out that, this is the official ending. Apparently the last episode's ending was just like a special ending because it was the end of the arc, which I thought didn't make sense. I was like, why is it recapping the arc after they just finished the arc? You don't normally get that. But now it makes sense. That was just like a one-off sort of thing. And this is the official ending, which definitely looks really, really cool. I love the style for it. And all of this stuff, I'm excited to see. I totally forgot about this, but this is Sadara's manga arc. She had like her own manga before the movie came out. She got one. Mitsuki got like a one-shot, but his was cool too. So maybe we'll get that after the Boruto movie stuff, just because of what it explains, and they might be holding that off until they reveal a very specific thing, which I feel is so obvious at this point. But they're going to hold that off until those episodes, because something gets revealed in the film. So they might save his one-shot for, excuse me, like an episode like right after or whatever. But the new ending officially shows what I assume is going to be the next story arc, which does take place, I forgot about this, but the manga story does take place before the film. So I'm very excited for that, because it's Sadara's story, and we're finally going to get some focus on her, because she's not existed basically in this anime. And I'm like, she's supposed to be one of the main people, and I totally forgot, like, oh yeah, there's this manga. It's not just the Boruto movie and just the Boruto manga. Sadara had her own thing before the movie even came out. So I'm very excited that we're finally getting into that. And that's also going to have a lot of focus on Chocho, who I feel even has more screen time than Sadara does at this point. But it's going to focus all on Sadara. I am very curious how they're going to do it, because once again with the Boruto stuff, I'm curious, are they going to like retcon certain things, or how's that going to play out? But really nobody's in that manga except for Sadara and Chocho. As far as like the actual kids go, Boruto, it's been years since I've read that, because I read it like when it actually first came out. But Boruto's not really in it that much, if at all. And it's mostly the adults, which is actually kind of cool. I'm kind of excited just to see that, because Naruto is actually like the main fighting person, because of course he's stronger than the girls. So he's like the main person that fights in that manga for the most part. So we'll get to see a lot more of Naruto when that eventually gets there. And then it's Sadara and Chocho as like the kids in that, because it's Sadara's story, and she just has Chocho as her friend along for the ride. And so there's some stuff that they go through, like the whole story arc. So for anyone who's read the manga, it doesn't matter if they go through it. And for people that don't know the official story, I guess in a sense it spoils it, but not really. It shows like some really vague stuff, so you don't technically know exactly how, how certain things play out. But they show like all the big moments, and it's Sadara and her parents and a specific conflict, which of course you could probably pick up. I won't even talk about it, just in case anyone doesn't actually know what the conflict was in the beginning of that manga. I won't bother spoiling that, but they show some images, and we get to see some new characters, or old characters finally coming in. We got Team Taka, sorry, kind of showing up in like the minimalist art form, which I thought was actually pretty cool. So they kind of go through. We get some shots of Naruto in his cloak, like fighting alongside the girls and stuff. And they go through a lot of the big points that are going to be happening, or that did happen from Sato's manga, which will finally be showing up in anime form, which is really cool. Because it was a really great manga. There was some really decent action that happened, especially towards the end. It got really crazy. So I am actually really excited for that. I've totally forgot about it. All I've been thinking of is Boruto the movie. How is this going to be retconned? Is it going to be retconned? Are they going to kick these characters out and make it work? And we have something like right before that, which is Sato's manga. And I was like, oh yeah, totally forgot that that would happen before the Boruto stuff. So now I have to wonder, are they going to retcon that? Are they going to add the characters in? Because like I said, really nobody's in it. Like, Boruto shows up at the beginning of that, if I remember right, during the manga. And then it's all about Sadara. Like, that was the point, was to have her story told, because Boruto was getting his own movie. So it's like, here's her story. And then, I believe the one-shot for Mitsuki was before the movie as well. I really can't remember. But it was like, you know, here's her story, Mitsuki got a one-shot, and then Boruto had the whole movie about him. So it's like, alright, that's how we get to officially, that's how we first learned about the characters, you know, back when they were first introduced. And I was like, sweet. It was a great manga, and now I'm just really curious. Like, they would basically be pushing every other character out, because it doesn't even take place in the village. Like, that's a big thing about it, is like, none of the characters are a part of that story. So I'm really curious if they're going to, like, retcon some stuff, or, you know, like, they'd have to flat out retcon, because honestly, they really are not in the village for that much. It's not like, oh, you can throw a character in the background or whatever. They would have to straight up retcon if they were putting, like, Boruto in it or Mitsuki in it. Like, they do not show up for most of that story. So I'm really curious if they're just going to do it like the manga, which I'd be totally fine with. If that was, like, the official canon and they didn't retcon it at all, I'd be perfectly fine. It would be weird just because it's, like, they leave the village and it's, like, it leaves, like, almost every, you know, new character behind. But I'd still be fine with it because, like, I'm totally fine with them just leaving it the same. They don't need to retcon it. Just make it work. And honestly, they just leave the village, so there's not that much to change. They don't have to change literally anything. Just follow the story, they leave the village, and then most of it is outside of the village. Pretty much the whole thing is seriously outside the village. But it's a fantastic manga, so I'm very excited for them to get to that story. I assume it'll be a couple of episodes from now. I don't think it'll be too many episodes. I certainly hope. But we'll see what they do with the whole Denki Iwabe thing. But basically the last 4 minutes, the main stuff from the episode, meh. All the epilogue stuff, including the actual new ending, was like, that's me super excited. They showed all the stuff that's coming up, and most of it I actually know, which is weird that I'm so excited for it, but it just means we're getting super close to that stuff, and I'm just happy that we're almost there and now getting to, like, the Boruto manga, I assume, depending on how they decide to do it after they do the Boruto movie stuff. But enjoyed the ending to this episode, the epilogue stuff, but the main thing itself was meh to me. But I would love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts, at least favorite parts about it, and I definitely want to know how you guys are feeling about the epilogue scenes for sure. What was your favorite one? What does it make you hopeful for? The ending as well, just what do you guys think about those little epilogue segments from this episode? And of course, want to know what you guys thought about the whole episode, so please put your comments down in the comment section below, and of course, thanks for watching.